September 19, 1998. The Phoenician Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. 200 guests raise their champagne glasses as newlywed Sarah and Michael Bennett share their first dance as husband and wife. The bride's white dress catches the light like starlight on water. The groom can't stop smiling. Their whole lives stretch out before them like an endless Arizona highway. At 9:47 p.m., they kiss their families goodbye. Sarah's sister Emma watches them climb into Michael's white Honda Accord. The couple waves one last time. Their suitcases are packed in the trunk. Their honeymoon tickets to Hawaii rest in Michael's jacket pocket. The airport is 45 minutes away. Their flight leaves at midnight. They drive into the desert night. And they are never seen again. For 27 years, their family search. They plaster missing posters across 3 states. They hire private investigators who find nothing. They hold candlelight vigils on every anniversary. They cling to hope even as it withers like a desert flower in the unforgiving sun. Sarah's mother dies in 2021, still believing her daughter might be alive somewhere. Still waiting for a phone call that will never come. But then, on a scorching Tuesday morning in June 2025, a construction crew breaks ground on a new highway expansion 20 miles outside Phoenix. The excavator's blade scrapes through layers of hardened desert earth. And it hits something that shouldn't be there. Something that's been buried for 27 years. What they uncover will transform a cold case into a living nightmare. The truth about that wedding night is far more sinister than anyone imagined. Because some secrets don't stay buried forever. And when they finally surface, they bring with them a tale of greed, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder that will shake this community to its core. This is the story of how one night of celebration became an execution. How 2 young lives were stolen for the most contemptible of reasons. And how justice, though delayed by nearly 3 decades, finally found its way through the darkness. If you're fascinated by real mysteries and true crime stories that will keep you up at night, this is the channel for you. Subscribe to Ultimate Crime Stories and hit that notification bell, because we're about to take you deep into one of the most chilling cases Arizona has ever seen. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail of what happens next. The desert sun beats down with the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer and dance. Tommy Reeves has been operating heavy machinery for 17 years, and he knows the difference between rock-compacted soil and something that simply doesn't belong. It's 10:23 a.m. when he feels the resistance. His excavator blade catches on something solid about 6 feet below the surface. At first, he thinks it's a boulder. But boulders don't have that kind of uniform resistance. Boulders don't feel deliberate. Tommy climbs down from his cab, sweat already soaking through his shirt despite the early hour. He walks to the edge of the excavation site and peers down into the trench his machine has carved through the desert floor. The disturbed earth reveals something pale. Something metallic. Something that sends a cold spike of dread through his chest despite the 100-degree heat. He calls over his supervisor, Frank Gutierrez. Frank is a 30-year veteran of construction work who's seen everything from ancient Native American artifacts to buried toxic waste. But when he looks down into that trench, his face goes pale. Partially exposed in the excavated area is what appears to be the roof of a vehicle. The paint is faded to a sickly off-white, covered in decades of accumulated dust and mineral deposits. But it's not the car itself that makes Frank reach for his phone. It's the way the earth has been mounded over it. The deliberate layers of soil and desert rock. The careful concealment. This isn't a car that broke down and was abandoned. This isn't a vehicle that rolled off the road in an accident. This is a car that someone buried. Intentionally. Methodically. With the clear purpose of making sure it was never found. Frank's hands shake slightly as he dials 911. Within 90 minutes, the construction site transforms into a crime scene. Yellow police tape cordons off the area. Forensic technicians in white suits photograph every angle. News helicopters circle overhead like vultures, their cameras transmitting live footage to every major station in Phoenix. Detective Raymond Cordero stands at the edge of the excavation, watching his team work with the careful precision of archaeologists. He's 56 years old, 32 years with the Phoenix Police Department, and he's seen enough tragedy to fill several lifetimes. But there's something about buried cars that always hits different. Because you know what's probably inside. You know what you're going to find. The forensic team clears away enough dirt to expose the license plate. Even through the rust and deterioration, the numbers are readable. A young officer runs them through the system. When the results come back, the officer's face goes white. The vehicle is registered to Michael Bennett, reported missing on September 20th, 1998, along with his wife, Sarah Bennett, née Harper. Last seen leaving their wedding reception at the Phoenician Resort. Destination, Sky Harbor International Airport. They never arrived. Detective Cordero closes his eyes for a moment. He remembers this case. Everyone in the department remembers this case. It was the kind of disappearance that haunts a community. The newlyweds who vanished on what should have been the happiest night of their lives. The case that appeared on anniversary news segments every year for the first decade, then every few years, then gradually faded from public consciousness as hope died and life moved on. But now, 27 years later, the desert is giving up its dead. The forensic team carefully, methodically, excavates around the vehicle. It takes hours. The sun arcs across the sky. The temperature climbs past 110 degrees. But they can't rush this. Evidence from a burial site this old is fragile, precious, easily destroyed by carelessness. By late afternoon, they've exposed the entire vehicle. The Honda Accord sits in its earthen grave like a coffin. Through the dirt-caked windows, they can see suitcases still in the back seat. A garment bag hanging on the rear hook. The detritus of a honeymoon that never happened. Detective Cordero gives the nod. The forensic team approaches the trunk. The lock has corroded over the decades, and it takes 3 attempts with a crowbar before it finally pops open. What they find inside confirms every terrible suspicion. 2 bodies. Skeletal remains wrapped in what were once blankets, now mostly rotted away. Based on the positioning and the scraps of fabric still clinging to the bones, one appears to be female, wearing what might have been casual travel clothes. The other, male, in the remnants of jeans and a button-down shirt. Sarah and Michael Bennett, stolen from the world on their wedding night, hidden away like garbage in the trunk of their own car, left to decompose in the Arizona heat while their families searched desperately, while their friends mourned, while their mothers died, never knowing what happened to their children. Detective Cordero turns away from the grave. He's seen plenty of bodies in his career, but there's something particularly cruel about this. About the hope these 2 young people must have felt as they drove away from their wedding. About how quickly that hope must have turned to terror. About the fact that someone looked at these newlyweds and saw nothing but obstacles to be eliminated. He pulls out his phone and makes the call he's been dreading. The call that will shatter what's left of a family's world. Emma Whitmore is in her kitchen in Scottsdale, preparing dinner for her 17-year-old daughter Jennifer, when her phone rings. She doesn't recognize the number, but something about seeing Phoenix PD on the caller ID makes her stomach drop in a way she hasn't felt in years. She answers. A man's voice, kind but grave, identifies himself as Detective Cordero. He asks if she's Emma Whitmore, formerly Emma Harper. He asks if she's sitting down. And then he says the words that have been haunting Emma's nightmares for 27 years. They found Sarah's car. Emma's knife clatters to the cutting board. The room seems to tilt. Her daughter appears in the doorway, concern creasing her young face. This girl who never knew her Aunt Sarah except through photographs and stories. This girl who was born 3 years after Sarah disappeared, who grew up with a ghost for an aunt. The detective is still talking. He's saying something about coming to the station. Something about needing to discuss details in person. Something about positive identification and dental records and next of kin. But Emma already knows. She's known really for 27 years. Known it in her bones, in her gut, in the way you know things you can't bear to accept. Sarah isn't coming home. Sarah has been dead for longer than she was alive. Sarah was 23 years old when someone murdered her, and now Emma is 46, and her sister will be frozen at 23 forever. The drive to the police station passes in a blur. Jennifer insists on coming, holding her mother's hand tight. At the station, Detective Cordero meets them in the lobby. He's tall, gray-haired, with kind eyes that have seen too much. He leads them to a small conference room and waits until they're seated before he begins. The car was deliberately buried in a remote location. Based on the depth and method of burial, it was done shortly after their disappearance. They found human remains in the trunk. 2 individuals. Dental records will confirm identification, but given the circumstances and location, they have every reason to believe these are Sarah and Michael Bennett. Emma hears herself make a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Jennifer's grip on her hand tightens. Detective Cordero continues. This was not an accident. Both victims show signs of trauma consistent with homicide. Specifically, gunshot wounds to the head. Execution style. They're treating this as a double murder investigation. The word murder hangs in the air like smoke. For 27 years, Emma imagined scenarios. A car accident, bodies thrown clear, never found. A random carjacking gone wrong. Even in her darkest moments, the possibility that Sarah and Michael had faked their deaths, though she never truly believed it. But this, cold-blooded execution, their bodies stuffed in a trunk like trash. Buried in the desert like a shameful secret. Detective Cordero leans forward. His voice is gentle but firm. This case is 27 years old, but the fact that the bodies were buried, that someone took the time and effort to hide them so thoroughly, tells him this wasn't random. Someone knew Sarah and Michael. Someone had a reason. And he's going to find out who. He needs Emma's help. Needs her to remember everything about that night. About the days leading up to the wedding. About anyone who might have had a reason to hurt her sister or Michael. About any detail, no matter how small, that might have seemed off at the time. Emma wipes her eyes. She's 46 years old. She was 19 when Sarah disappeared, just starting college. Her whole life ahead of her. Now she has a teenage daughter and a job and a mortgage and all the trappings of a normal life. But inside, part of her has been frozen at 19, waiting for her sister to come home. She begins to talk about Sarah and Michael's relationship, how they met at Arizona State University, both seniors, how Michael was getting his MBA while Sarah taught second grade, how everyone loved them, how their wedding was beautiful, how there was no drama, no problems, nothing that suggested violence was lurking just hours away. The reception ended around 9:45 p.m. Sarah changed out of her wedding dress in a hotel room into comfortable travel clothes for the flight. They said goodbye to everyone. Emma remembers hugging her sister tight, Sarah whispering, "Take care of Mom for me," because their mother had been drinking too much since the divorce. Sarah promising to call from Maui. And then they were gone, driving off into the night, and that was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. Detective Cordero asks about enemies. About anyone who seemed upset at the wedding. About ex-boyfriends or business rivals, or anyone who might have held a grudge. Emma thinks hard. Sarah had dated someone before Michael. Dylan Cooper. They'd been together for about 18 months in college. The breakup was messy. Dylan called a lot afterward. Showed up at Sarah's apartment uninvited a few times. But that was 2 years before she even met Michael. Emma doesn't think Dylan even came to the wedding. Then there was Michael's business partner. The guy he'd started a software company with right after graduation. Emma can't remember his name at first. Then it comes to her. Nathan. Nathan Morrison. Sarah had mentioned once, maybe a month before the wedding, that there was some tension between Michael and Nathan. Something about money or ownership shares. But Emma was 19 and wrapped up in her own life. She didn't pay much attention to the details. Detective Cordero makes careful notes. He asks more questions. About phone calls in the days before the wedding. About whether Sarah or Michael seemed nervous or scared. About their finances, their travel plans, their relationship with their families. Emma answers everything she can remember. But it was 27 years ago. Memory is a fragile thing, and time has worn away so many details. What she remembers most is the feeling. The terrible, hollow feeling when her mother called the next afternoon, frantic because Sarah and Michael never called from Hawaii, never checked into their hotel, never boarded their flight, just vanished as if they'd driven off the edge of the earth. The police searched everywhere. Every mile of road between the Phoenician and Sky Harbor Airport. They questioned everyone at the wedding. They checked traffic cameras and pulled phone records and analyzed bank accounts. And found nothing. No trace. No evidence. No leads. Just two people who drove away from their wedding reception and ceased to exist. Until now. Detective Cordero thanks Emma for her time. He promises to keep her updated. He tells her that the medical examiner will release the bodies once the autopsy is complete, and she'll be able to arrange a funeral, to finally lay her sister to rest. As Emma and Jennifer leave the station, Emma feels something shifting inside her. The dull, familiar ache of grief that's been her constant companion for 27 years is sharpening into something else. Something harder. Anger. Determination. Her sister's body has been found, but whoever put her in that trunk is still out there. Still walking around free. Still breathing while Sarah lies cold and dead. But not for much longer. Because Detective Cordero made a promise, and Emma can see in his eyes that he means to keep it. After 27 years, justice is finally coming. And Emma is going to make damn sure that whoever killed her sister pays for it. The Phoenix Police Department's Cold Case Division occupies a floor that feels frozen in time. Boxes of old files line the walls. The fluorescent lights hum with an irritating frequency. The air conditioning struggles against the Arizona heat seeping through the windows. Detective Cordero sits at his desk the morning after meeting with Emma Whitmore, surrounded by everything the department has on the Bennett case. The original investigation file is thick. Missing person reports filed within 24 hours. Search warrants executed. Interviews conducted with every wedding guest, every family member, every friend and coworker they could locate. Phone records subpoenaed. Financial statements analyzed. And despite all that effort, all that dedication, nothing. The trail went cold within weeks. But now they have something they didn't have before. They have bodies. They have a crime scene. They have forensic evidence from a time when DNA analysis and modern investigative techniques can extract information from the smallest traces. Cordero spreads the crime scene photographs across his desk. The white Honda nose down in its desert grave. The way the earth was carefully mounded over it, then covered with displaced brush to match the surrounding landscape. Whoever buried this car knew the area intimately. Knew exactly where to dig, so the grave wouldn't be disturbed. At least not for 27 years. His phone rings. Dr. Lisa Martinez from the medical examiner's office. She's completed the preliminary examination. Both victims died from gunshot wounds to the head. Small caliber, likely a .22 pistol. Based on the angle of entry and the blood spatter patterns inside the trunk, they were shot somewhere else, then placed in the vehicle after death. The trunk became their coffin, not the place of their execution. Dr. Martinez found fibers on Sarah's clothing. Industrial carpeting, the kind used in warehouses and commercial spaces in the late 1990s. The samples are being analyzed, but it suggests they were killed inside a building, not out in the desert. Time of death is estimated within 24 hours of their reported disappearance. Dental records confirm the identities as Sarah and Michael Bennett. Cordero thanks her and hangs up. His mind is already working through the implications. Execution-style killings suggest premeditation. Planning. Someone lured or forced these newlyweds to a secondary location. Shot them in cold blood. Then transported the bodies, loaded them in the trunk, drove to a pre-selected burial site, and spent hours digging a grave deep enough for an entire car. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a calculated murder carried out by someone who knew what they were doing. A knock on his door interrupts his thoughts. Officer Jennifer Park enters. She's 32, one of the brightest detectives in the department, with an encyclopedic memory and a talent for finding connections others miss. She's been running down names from the original investigation, starting with Dylan Cooper, the ex-boyfriend Emma mentioned. Cooper is clean on paper. He's a dentist now, married with 3 kids, lives in Tempe. No criminal record beyond a DUI from his college days. His alibi from 1998 was solid. He was home with his parents in Flagstaff for the weekend. They confirmed it. But Park dug deeper into his financial records from that time period. 2 weeks before the wedding, Cooper withdrew $12,000 in cash from his savings account. The day after Sarah and Michael disappeared, he deposited $8,000 back. That's suspicious. But what's more interesting is where the missing $4,000 went. Park opens her laptop and shows Cordero the bank records. Cooper made a cash payment to someone named Victor Delgado. And Victor Delgado's name appears in multiple organized crime investigations from the 1990s. Nothing ever stuck, but he was known for running high-stakes poker games and solving problems for people willing to pay his rates. But here's where it gets really interesting. Park pulls up information on Nathan Morrison, Michael's business partner. Morrison and Michael started DataSync Solutions in 1996, equal partners. But 6 months before the wedding, Michael filed paperwork to dissolve the partnership. The reason? Morrison had been embezzling from the company. Approximately $180,000 over 18 months. Michael discovered it and was planning to file criminal charges right after his honeymoon. Cordero leans back in his chair. So Morrison had motive. Major motive. Not just the money, but the threat of prison time. Embezzlement of that amount could mean 5 to 10 years. What happened to Morrison after Michael disappeared? Park smiles grimly. That's the kicker. Morrison declared Michael legally dead after 7 years and assumed full control of DataSync Solutions. The company is now worth about $35 million. Morrison lives in Paradise Valley, drives a Porsche, and sits on the board of several charities. He built an empire on his dead partner's company. Cordero looks at the photos Park brought. Nathan Morrison in 1998, a young man in his 20s, standing in front of the DataSync office. Nathan Morrison now, silver-haired and successful, posing at charity galas and business conferences. A man who had $180,000 worth of motive in 1998 and a $35 million empire in 2025. And here's one more thing. Park pulls out another document. Morrison's alibi for the night of September 19, 1998, was that he was at a business conference in San Diego. The hotel confirmed he checked in that evening. But San Diego is only a 5-hour drive from Phoenix. He could have easily driven back, been in Phoenix by 2 a.m., and returned to San Diego by morning. His alibi isn't as airtight as it seemed. Cordero makes a decision. Time to have a conversation with Nathan Morrison. And they need to find out everything they can about Victor Delgado. Because something tells him these names are going to lead them straight to the truth. Nathan Morrison's office is exactly what you'd expect from a man who built a multi-million-dollar company. Top floor of a gleaming glass tower in North Scottsdale. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Camelback Mountain. Modern furniture, expensive art, and the kind of quiet that only money can buy. Detective Cordero and Officer Park are kept waiting for 25 minutes before Morrison's assistant finally leads them down a hallway lined with photographs. DataSync through the years. Morrison shaking hands with tech industry leaders. Morrison receiving awards. Morrison at ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Notably absent from all these photos, Michael Bennett. It's as if Michael never existed. As if the company's co-founder had been erased from its history entirely. Morrison stands when they enter, extending his hand with the practiced ease of someone who's spent decades in boardrooms. He's 51 now, his dark hair going silver at the temples. His suit probably worth more than Cordero's monthly salary. Everything about him projects success, confidence, control. He invites them to sit. He's heard about the discovery of the car, of course. Terrible tragedy. He and Michael were like brothers. The disappearance devastated him, both personally and professionally. suddenly trying to run a startup alone while not knowing if his partner would ever come back. Cordero lets him talk, lets him establish his narrative. Then he asks the first real question. When did Morrison last see Michael? The wedding reception. Morrison was there along with probably 200 other people. Beautiful ceremony. Sarah looked radiant. After they left, Morrison stayed for maybe another hour, then went home. Had an early flight the next morning to San Diego for a conference. And the relationship between Morrison and Michael in the months before the wedding? How was the business doing? For the first time, something flickers in Morrison's eyes. Just for a moment, his jaw tightens. The business was doing well. They had some disagreements about direction, as partners do. But nothing serious. Nothing serious? Cordero opens his file. So Michael didn't confront Morrison about financial irregularities? About approximately $180,000 missing from company accounts? About planning to file criminal charges? The silence stretches long. Morrison stands and walks to the window, his back to them. When he speaks, his voice is carefully controlled. That's ancient history. Yes, there was a misunderstanding about how funds were allocated. He made some mistakes, but they were working it out. There was no need for criminal charges. Were they working it out? Because the paperwork Michael filed suggests he was planning to press charges. Suggests he was planning to dissolve the partnership entirely. Morrison turns back to them. Look, he was young and stupid. He made bad financial decisions. But they talked about it the week before the wedding. Agreed to bring in an accountant after the honeymoon. Sort everything out properly. How convenient that Michael disappeared before that could happen. Morrison's face flushes. Are you suggesting I had something to do with this? I was in San Diego that night. I have receipts. Witness statements. Everything was checked 27 years ago. You checked into a hotel in San Diego at 7:30 p.m. Sarah and Michael left their reception at 9:47 p.m. Phoenix time. That's a 5-hour drive. You could have driven back, been in Phoenix by 3 a.m., handled your business, and been back in San Diego before noon. That's insane. Why would I risk everything? Morrison's voice rises. Michael was my friend. We built something together. Yes, I screwed up with the money. Yes, I was in trouble. But I didn't hurt him. I didn't hurt Sarah. I've spent 27 years wishing I could go back and fix my mistakes. Cordero stands. Tell us about the money. What did you use the $180,000 for? Morrison returns to his desk, sits heavily. For a long moment, he stares at his hands. When he speaks, his voice is different. Less controlled. I had a gambling problem. Nothing huge, but I was making bad bets, losing more than I could afford. I thought I could pay it back before Michael noticed. I was wrong. Who did you owe money to? Morrison looks up sharply. What? You said you had gambling debts. Who did you owe money to in 1998? Private games, mostly. High-stakes poker. There was a man who ran them. Victor Delgado. But I paid him back. Eventually. And Victor Delgado's name appears in several organized crime investigations. The man wasn't just running card games. He was connected to people who made problems disappear. I didn't know that. Not at the time. He was just a guy who ran poker games. Did you ever discuss Michael with Delgado? Did you tell him Michael was planning to file charges against you? Morrison's face goes pale. I might have mentioned it. I was drinking a lot back then, stressed about everything. But I never asked him to do anything. I never wanted Michael hurt. Cordero and Park stand to leave. We'll need you to come to the station and make a formal statement. And we'll need a list of everyone who attended those poker games. Everyone who was there the weeks before Michael and Sarah disappeared. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But I'd strongly suggest you cooperate fully. Because right now, you're the only person we know of who had both motive and opportunity. And you built a $35 million empire on your dead partner's grave. That doesn't look good, Mr. Morrison. But wait. Before we continue, I need to tell you something that will change everything you think you know about this case. Because Dylan Cooper, the ex-boyfriend who paid Victor Delgado $4,000, is about to reveal a secret that's been hidden for 27 years. A secret that will crack this investigation wide open. But first, we need to talk to him. Dylan Cooper's dental practice is in a modest building in downtown Tempe, sandwiched between a coffee shop and a yoga studio. The waiting room smells of mint and antiseptic. Family photos line the walls. Cooper with his wife and 3 kids, all smiles at the Grand Canyon, at Disney World, at various soccer games and school events. The picture of normal suburban success. Cooper himself is shorter than Cordero expected, with thinning sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He looks nervous when they're shown into his private office, standing to shake hands with a grip that's too firm, overcompensating. He hasn't thought about Sarah in years, he says. Terrible, what happened? She was a wonderful person. They dated for almost 2 years in college. He was devastated when he heard she disappeared. Tell us about the breakup. Cooper flushes. They were young. He handled it badly. Called her too much. Showed up at her apartment when he shouldn't have. But that was 6 months before she even met Michael. By the time they got married, he'd moved on. Had he? Because phone records show he called Sarah's apartment 17 times in the week before her wedding. Cooper's face goes white. I was trying to apologize. To make peace before she started her new life. The calls were never answered. I never spoke to her. Where were you the night of September 19th, 1998? I was in Flagstaff with my parents. My father had just been diagnosed with cancer. I drove up that Friday and stayed through the weekend. My mother and father both confirmed that. And yet, Cordero says, they have toll records showing Cooper's car passed through the Flagstaff Toll Plaza, heading south at 8:15 p.m. that night, and heading north again at 4:30 a.m. the following morning. The color drains completely from Cooper's face. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. That's not possible. Your parents confirmed you were there, but elderly parents might not notice if their adult son slipped out late at night. The timing works perfectly. You could have driven to Phoenix, done what you needed to do, and been back before morning. No, that's insane. I would never hurt Sarah. I loved her. Then explain the $12,000 you withdrew 2 weeks before her wedding, and the $8,000 you deposited the day after she disappeared. Where did the other $4,000 go? Cooper stands abruptly, his chair hitting the wall. I need to call my lawyer. That's your right. But let me tell you what I think happened. I think you couldn't accept that Sarah had moved on. You watched her fall in love with someone else. Watched her plan a wedding. And something in you snapped. You followed them that night. Maybe you just wanted to talk to her. Maybe things went wrong. Maybe Michael tried to protect her. And maybe you had a gun. Stop. Cooper's voice cracks. Stop it. I didn't kill anyone. Then explain it. Help us understand. Cooper sinks back into his chair. His hands are shaking. For a long moment, he stares at his desk, at the photos of his family, at the life he's built. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely audible. I did drive to Phoenix that night, but not to see Sarah. I went to see a woman I was having an affair with. Her name was Jessica. She lived in Scottsdale. I was engaged to someone else at the time. The woman, who's now my wife. She had no idea. I used the excuse of being in Flagstaff to slip away. The money I withdrew was to pay for an apartment I'd rented for Jessica. The money I deposited was what was left after I broke things off with her that night. They'll need Jessica's full name and contact information. If his alibi is legitimate, they need to verify it. Otherwise, he remains a suspect in a double homicide. Cooper writes down a name and address with trembling hands. Jessica Martinez. She's married now too, he says. Has kids. Hasn't spoken to her in 20 years. Please be discreet. After they leave Cooper's office, Park turns to Cordero in the parking lot. Do you believe him? About the affair? Maybe. But even if he was with this Jessica woman, the timing still works. He could have met her, left, intercepted the Bennetts, and then gone back to Flagstaff. We need to find Jessica Martinez. Already on it. But there's something else. Cordero shows her his phone. The forensics team has results from the warehouse analysis. What warehouse? That's what I'm about to tell you. Because Nathan Morrison's original DataSync office, it was in a warehouse in Tempe. And the fibers found on Sarah's clothing, they're a match. The warehouse sits in an industrial area that's seen better days. Many of the surrounding buildings are vacant, windows broken, parking lots cracked and overgrown. The DataSync building was sold years ago, converted into storage units. But the bones of the original structure remain. Dr. Martinez from the ME's office is already there with her forensics team when Cordero and Park arrive. They're looking for blood evidence, ballistic traces, anything that might have survived 27 years. The carpet is long gone, Dr. Martinez explains. But if they killed the Bennetts here, there might be traces in the concrete beneath. Blood has a way of seeping through. They work methodically. Luminol spray, UV lights, careful photography of every section. Hours pass. The sun sets. The industrial park falls into shadow. And still they find nothing. Cordero is starting to think they're wrong about the location when one of the technicians calls out from what used to be a corner office space. When Cordero reaches him, he understands why. Under the UV light, the luminol has revealed a pattern on the concrete floor. Not just spatter. A large pool. And drag marks leading toward where the loading dock used to be. That's a lot of blood, Dr. Martinez says quietly. Consistent with two people bleeding out. The drag marks suggest they were moved after death. Probably loaded into a vehicle right here. They bag every sample, every fiber, every microscopic trace. Someone murdered Sarah and Michael Bennett in this cold, empty warehouse. Shot them execution style. Let them bleed out on this concrete floor. Then dragged their bodies through the blood, loaded them into the trunk of their own car, and drove them to a pre-selected grave in the desert. Cordero steps outside. The desert night is cool now, stars visible above the warehouse. He calls Emma Whitmore. She deserves to know what they found. She answers immediately. Detective? We've located what we believe is the primary crime scene. The warehouse where DataSync Solutions operated in 1998. We're processing it now. The fibers on Sarah's clothing match. There's a long silence. Then Emma's voice, tight with controlled fury. Nathan Morrison's warehouse. He killed my sister. He killed them both. And then he took everything Michael built. We don't have enough evidence yet to make an arrest, Cordero says gently. But we're getting closer. I promise you, we're going to find out exactly what happened that night. After he hangs up, Cordero looks back at the warehouse. The same building that watched Sarah and Michael Bennett take their last breaths. The same concrete that soaked up their blood. The same walls that heard whatever final words they spoke. But buildings remember. Evidence persists. And sometimes justice takes 27 years. But it comes nonetheless. The DNA results arrive 3 days later. Cordero is at his desk when the email comes through. He reads it once, then again, his pulse quickening with each word. The blood found in the warehouse matches Sarah and Michael Bennett. No surprise there. But there's something else. A third DNA profile. Degraded, but identifiable. Skin cells found mixed with the blood evidence, suggesting direct contact with the victims at the time of their deaths. They run the profile through every database available. CODIS, the National Criminal Database. Arizona State Records. Nothing. Whoever killed the Bennetts was never arrested, never fingerprinted, never left their DNA in any official system. But that doesn't mean the profile is useless. The forensics lab tried something else. They ran the DNA through genealogy databases. The kind where people send in samples to trace their ancestry, build family trees, find distant relatives. And they got a hit. Not a direct match, but a familial match. The DNA at the crime scene is related to someone who submitted their profile to an ancestry website. A woman named Patricia Delgado, Victor Delgado's daughter. Which means the DNA at the crime scene came from Victor Delgado himself or a very close male relative. Cordero and Park are in the car within minutes, heading to Delgado's business. Because Victor Delgado, The man who ran illegal poker games in the 90s cleaned up his act remarkably well. He now owns a chain of car dealerships across the valley, does charity work, sits on boards. The picture of a legitimate businessman. But his DNA is at a murder scene. And that's not something you can clean up with a good lawyer and charitable donations. Delgado's flagship dealership is impressive. Acres of gleaming vehicles, colorful banners, salespeople in polo shirts wandering the lot. The showroom is glass and marble. Delgado's office is on the second floor, overlooking his automotive empire. The man himself is in his late 60s now. Silver-haired, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably costs more than Cordero's entire wardrobe. He stands when they enter, his handshake firm, his smile professionally warm. Detectives, please sit. I've been following the Bennett case on the news. Terrible thing. Just terrible. Mr. Delgado, we understand you ran high-stakes poker games in the late 1990s. Delgado's smile doesn't waver. That was a lifetime ago, detective. I made some poor choices in my youth. Spent the last 25 years building legitimate businesses, giving back to the community. We're investigating a double homicide. 2 people who knew you, who owed you money, died on September 19th, 1998. I knew a lot of people back then, detective. Many of them owed me money at various times. That's the nature of gambling. But I never hurt anyone over debts. That would be bad for business. Nathan Morrison owed you approximately $180,000 in gambling debts. Dylan Cooper owed you $4,000. Both men had connections to the victims. If they owed me money, they paid it back. I kept records. All perfectly legal now that I'm no longer in that business. But I had nothing to do with any murders. Cordero pulls out a photograph of Sarah and Michael at their wedding. Do you recognize these people? Delgado studies the photo for a long moment. Something unreadable flickers across his face. I've seen their pictures on the news. But I didn't know them personally. Nathan Morrison never mentioned them? Never discussed his business partner who was planning to file embezzlement charges? Morrison discussed a lot of things when he was drinking and losing at poker. I didn't pay much attention to most of it. What about September 19th, 1998? Where were you that night? Delgado leans back in his chair. Detective, that was 27 years ago. I have no idea where I was on any specific night from that period. Let me refresh your memory. A poker game was held at the DataSync warehouse in Tempe that night. Nathan Morrison's warehouse. Multiple witnesses have confirmed you were there. For the first time, Delgado's composure cracks slightly. His eyes narrow. Who told you that? Does it matter? Were you there or not? Delgado is quiet for a moment. I may have attended a game there. It was a convenient location. But that doesn't mean I had anything to do with what happened to those people. Then you won't mind providing a DNA sample. We're requesting samples from everyone who had access to that warehouse the night of the murders. I'll need to speak with my attorney before I agree to any DNA testing. That's your right, Cordero says. But refusing to cooperate looks very suspicious, especially considering we already have DNA evidence from the crime scene, and it's related to your daughter's DNA profile. Delgado's jaw tightens. What are you talking about? Your daughter Patricia submitted her DNA to an ancestry website. The DNA we found at the murder scene is a familial match to hers, which means it came from you or a close male relative. You were at that warehouse, Mr. Delgado. Your DNA proves it. And you lied about knowing the victims. Delgado stands abruptly. This conversation is over. You want anything else from me? Talk to my lawyers. As they leave the dealership, Park turns to Cordero. He's lying about something. Did you see his face when you showed him the photo? He recognized them. Recognizing someone from the news isn't the same as proving he killed them. But you're right. He knows more than he's saying. We need to dig into Delgado's organization. Everyone who worked for him in the 90s. Someone helped him commit these murders. Someone who might be willing to talk. But they don't have to dig far. Because the next day, Emma Whitmore calls with information that changes everything. Emma can't sleep. It's 2 a.m. and she's lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning through everything Detective Cordero told her. The warehouse. The DNA. Victor Delgado's name appearing again and again, connected to both suspects. She gives up on sleep and goes to her home office. In the closet, she's kept everything related to Sarah's disappearance in boxes. Newspaper clippings. Police reports. Wedding invitations. Guest lists. All the detritus of a life interrupted. She spreads it across her desk and begins going through it again, looking for something she might have missed 27 years ago. Some detail that would make sense now in light of what they know. She's going through the wedding guest list when a name jumps out at her. Someone she doesn't remember from the actual ceremony. Thomas Delgado. +1. Delgado. Could it be a coincidence? She grabs her phone and calls Detective Cordero, not caring about the hour. He answers, groggy but alert when he hears the panic in her voice. The guest list from the wedding. There's a name on it. Thomas Delgado. Is he related to Victor Delgado? She hears rustling. Cordero waking up fully. Spell the first name. Thomes. He had a +1. I don't remember who he was or how he knew Sarah and Michael. I'm calling Officer Park. Stay on the line. Emma waits, her heart pounding. After a few minutes, Cordero comes back. Thomas Delgado is Victor's nephew. He would have been in his early 20s in 1998. We're pulling his information now. Why would Victor Delgado's nephew be invited to Sarah's wedding? That's what Emma wants to know. She searches through more boxes and finds something else. An email printout from Michael's account, dated 3 weeks before the wedding. It's from someone named Tommy, asking about final numbers for the rehearsal dinner. Michael replied, confirming space for 30 people. At the bottom, Tommy had added, looking forward to celebrating with you both. You and Nathan have built something special. Tommy knew both Michael and Nathan. He was involved with the business, somehow. Emma takes a photo of the email and sends it to Cordero. Within an hour, they have the full picture. Tommy Delgado worked for DataSync Solutions from 1996 to 1999. He was there through the entire time of the murders. He knew Michael personally. He was invited to the wedding. And he had access to the warehouse. Victor Delgado's nephew was there the night Sarah and Michael Bennett were murdered. Tommy Delgado lives in Paradise Valley now, in a sprawling ranch-style house with views of Camelback Mountain. He works for his uncle's car dealership chain, has for 20 years. Started as a salesman. Now he's vice president of operations. Made a comfortable life for himself. A life built, at least partially, on the graves of two people he once called friends. It's 4 a.m. when Detective Cordero and Officer Park arrive at his door. Tommy answers in a robe, his face showing annoyance at being woken. But when Cordero identifies himself and mentions Sarah and Michael Bennett, the annoyance shifts to something more guarded. You knew them. You attended their wedding. You worked for their company. That was a long time ago. What is this about? We're investigating their murders. And your DNA is related to DNA we found at the crime scene. We need you to come to the station and answer some questions. I'm not going anywhere without my lawyer. My uncle's lawyer. Why do you need your uncle's lawyer, Tommy? Because I know how this works. You're trying to pin something on my family. But we had nothing to do with what happened to Michael and Sarah. Then you won't mind providing a DNA sample to eliminate yourself from our investigation. I'll discuss it with my lawyer. Now get off my property. By dawn, they have a warrant. By noon, Tommy Delgado is sitting in an interrogation room with his lawyer beside him, refusing to answer questions. But Cordero has been a detective long enough to know when someone is scared. And Tommy Delgado is terrified. His hands shake slightly. His eyes dart to the door every few minutes. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Your uncle killed them, didn't he? Cordero says quietly. And you helped. Maybe you didn't want to. Maybe he forced you. But you were there, Tommy. Your DNA is at that warehouse. You can't run from that. My client isn't saying anything. The lawyer interjects. Nathan Morrison fled the country 3 days ago. Private jet to Costa Rica. That leaves you holding the bag for a double murder. Your uncle's DNA is at the scene too. He's going down for this. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you tell us what really happened. Maybe, just maybe, the prosecutor goes easier on you if you cooperate. Tommy looks at his lawyer, who shakes his head firmly. But Tommy's resolve is cracking. 27 years of carrying this secret. 27 years of looking over his shoulder. 27 years of knowing that one day, the desert might give up its dead and everything would come crashing down. I want a deal, Tommy says suddenly. Full immunity for testimony. Tommy, don't, his lawyer warns. I'm not going to prison for something my uncle did. I was 22 years old. I didn't know what he was planning. I didn't know until it was too late. Tell me what happened that night. Tommy closes his eyes. When he speaks, his voice is hollow, distant, as if he's watching the events from far away. Nathan came to my uncle desperate. Michael was going to file charges, ruin him. Nathan owed Uncle Victor a lot of money too. Almost $200,000. Victor said he could make the problem go away, but Nathan had to help. Nathan called Michael the day of the wedding. Told him there was an emergency at the warehouse. Some kind of break-in or damage. Michael said he'd stop by on the way to the airport, just for a few minutes to assess the situation. He brought Sarah because he didn't want to waste time dropping her off. They were already running late for their flight. What happened when they arrived? Tommy's voice breaks. I was there. Uncle Victor made me come. Said I needed to learn how business was sometimes done. I thought he was just going to scare them. Threaten Michael. Maybe rough him up a little. Show him what happened to people who didn't keep their mouths shut. But when they walked in, Tommy stops. Takes a shaky breath. He just shot them. Michael tried to fight back, tried to protect Sarah. But Uncle Victor shot him first. In the head. Then Sarah. She was screaming. And then she wasn't. It was so fast. There was so much blood. The room is silent except for the hum of the recording equipment and Tommy's ragged breathing. Nathan was there too, Tommy continues. He was supposed to be in San Diego, but he'd driven back. He was there when it happened. The three of us, we wrapped the bodies in tarps from the warehouse. Put them in the trunk of their car. Uncle Victor had already picked out a spot in the desert. He had shovels, had equipment ready in a truck. We drove out there that night and dug. Took us 4 hours to dig deep enough for the whole car. What happened after? We went back to the warehouse and cleaned. Uncle Victor knew how to hide evidence. He'd done it before. Poured chemicals on the concrete. Got rid of the tarps. Nathan was freaking out the whole time, saying we were all going to prison. But Uncle Victor just kept saying it would be fine. That no one would ever find them. That the desert keeps secrets. What happened to the gun? Uncle Victor kept it. He has a collection. Keeps them in a storage unit. Said it was insurance, in case anyone ever tried to cross him. Said as long as he had that gun, we were all in it together. Where's this storage unit? Tommy gives them the address. He's shaking so hard now he can barely hold the pen to write it down. This is his Hail Mary. His only chance at avoiding life in prison. 27 years he's kept this secret, and now he's giving it all up in the hope that betraying his uncle will save him. Cordero stands. Write down everything you remember about that night. Every detail. Every person who was there. Everything your uncle said. Because that's the only way you're getting any kind of deal. As Tommy begins to write, Cordero steps into the hallway where Park is waiting. We have him, she says. We have Victor Delgado. Get a warrant for that storage unit. And put out an APB. I don't want him getting on a plane to join Morrison in Costa Rica. But even as he says it, Cordero knows that men like Victor Delgado don't run. They fight. And they're most dangerous when they're cornered. Victor Delgado is not at home when the arrest warrant is issued. His wife, an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s, informs them coolly that her husband left early that morning for a business meeting. She doesn't know where or when he'll return. The storage unit is in Mesa. Climate-controlled units behind security gates and cameras. The manager, a nervous man in his 30s, unlocks Unit 247 with shaking hands. Inside, they find exactly what Tommy described. A gun collection, meticulously maintained and organized. Handguns, rifles, shotguns, all locked in glass cases with little plaques noting their make and model. But in one case, there's an empty space. The dust pattern shows clearly where a small handgun sat for years. Recently removed. He knew we were coming, Park says. Tommy must have warned him. Cordero pulls out his phone. Put a flag on Delgado's passport. Alert Border Patrol, airports, everything. And get me his cell phone records for the last 24 hours. While the forensic team processes the storage unit, they drive to Delgado's flagship dealership. The showroom is open business as usual. But Delgado's office upstairs is empty. His secretary looks genuinely concerned. Mr. Delgado called in sick this morning. He's never sick. In 15 years, I've never known him to miss a day of work. Delgado isn't at home. His car, a black Mercedes, isn't at any of its usual locations. His phone goes straight to voicemail. And as the hours pass with no sign of him, Cordero begins to suspect that Victor Delgado hasn't run from the law. He's planning something else. The call comes at 6 p.m. Emma Whitmore's number on Cordero's phone. When he answers, he immediately hears the fear in her voice. Detective, there's a car parked across the street from my house. It's been there for the past hour. A black Mercedes. I can see someone sitting in the driver's seat, but I can't make out who it is. Cordero is already moving toward his vehicle. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Lock all your doors and windows. Get Jennifer and go to an interior room. Somewhere without windows. Don't come out until I get there. You think it's him? You think it's Delgado? I don't know, but I'm not taking chances. I'm 15 minutes away. Phoenix PD is sending patrol units now. Cordero pushes his car to its limits, lights flashing, siren wailing. Beside him, Park is on the radio coordinating with the patrol units, converging on Emma's neighborhood. They arrive to find 2 patrol cars already on scene. But the black Mercedes is gone. The officers saw it pull away as they approached, heading east at high speed. They pursued it, but lost it in traffic. Cordero runs to Emma's door. She opens it immediately. Pale, Jennifer, behind her clutching her phone. Did you see who it was? Not clearly. But detective, Emma's voice shakes. He wanted me to see him. He sat there for an hour, making sure I knew he was watching. This is a message, isn't it? He's telling me he can get to me. Cordero steps inside, scanning the street. I'm posting officers here. 24-hour protection until we have Delgado in custody. Why would he come here? What does he want? His nephew gave him up. His whole carefully constructed life is crashing down. Men like Delgado don't accept that gracefully. If he can't escape justice, he'll try to eliminate anyone who can testify against him. Tommy. He'll go after Tommy. Cordero is already on his phone, calling the station. Get someone to Thomas Delgado's house now. Victor might go after him. But when officers arrive at Tommy's Paradise Valley home, they find him unharmed, sitting in his living room with his lawyer, both men pale and frightened. Tommy received a text message an hour earlier from an unknown number. Just 2 words, family loyalty. He's coming for me, Tommy says, his voice shaking. Uncle Victor doesn't forgive betrayal. I signed my own death warrant when I talked to you. They moved Tommy to a safe house. Unmarked location, armed guards at every entrance. But Cordero knows that won't stop Victor Delgado if he's truly determined. At midnight, the storage facility manager calls. He's reviewed the security footage like Cordero requested. Victor Delgado was there that morning at 5 a.m. He accessed his unit, was inside for about 10 minutes. Can you see what he took? The angle's not great, but he was carrying something when he left. Small, probably the handgun. And detective, he had something else. A large duffel bag. Looked heavy. He took it into the unit, then brought it back out. What was in the bag? I don't know. But whatever it was, he left it inside. Cordero and Park return to the storage facility. The manager unlocks Unit 247 once again. And there, sitting on the floor in the center of the space, is a black duffel bag that wasn't there during their earlier search. Park approaches it carefully, unzips it slowly. Inside are files, documents, photographs, evidence that Victor Delgado has carefully collected and preserved over decades. Photos of the warehouse the night of the murders, showing Nathan Morrison and Tommy cleaning up. Financial records documenting payments Morrison made to Delgado. Even a ledger detailing other crimes, other problems that Delgado solved for desperate men over the years. It's his insurance policy, Park says, flipping through the documents. Everything he needed to make sure no one ever crossed him. Or his confession, Cordero says quietly. He knows we're closing in. He knows Tommy talked. This is him admitting what he did before he disappears. Or before he goes out on his own terms. Cordero's stomach tightens. Men who leave confession evidence behind usually have one final play in mind. And Victor Delgado, cornered and facing life in prison, is exactly the type to want to control his own ending. We need to find him now, before he does something we can't undo. The breakthrough comes at 2 a.m. Victor Delgado's Mercedes is spotted at a rest stop off Interstate 10, heading east toward Tucson. Highway patrol moves to intercept. But by the time they arrive, the car is empty. Keys still in the ignition. Cordero stands in the rest stop parking lot, watching forensic technicians process the abandoned vehicle. Inside the Mercedes, they find Marcus's wallet, missing for 27 years. Sarah's wedding ring, cleaned and polished. And a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Cordero reads it, his jaw tightening. Detective Cordero, by the time you read this, you'll understand that I was never going to prison. I've lived my entire life on my own terms, and I'll die the same way. The evidence in the storage unit will confirm what my nephew told you. I killed Sarah and Michael Bennett. Nathan Morrison paid me $100,000 to solve his problem, and I solved it the only way I knew how. I'm not sorry for what I did. In my world, people who can't protect themselves don't survive. Michael should have been smarter. He should have been more careful about who he trusted. You'll find me where this all began. The desert keeps secrets, but it also demands payment eventually. I'm simply settling my debt. Victor Delgado. Park looks up from her phone. I've got his location. Cell phone pinged a tower near the original burial site. He's gone back there. They drive through the night. A convoy of police vehicles racing toward the desert coordinates where Michael Bennett's car was found weeks earlier. The excavation site is still marked with yellow tape, the earth scarred from the dig. And there, standing at the edge of the pit where the car had been buried, illuminated by the rising sun, is Victor Delgado. He holds a small handgun in his right hand, the same weapon that killed Sarah and Michael Bennett 27 years ago. Mr. Delgado, Cordero calls out, stepping from his vehicle with his hands visible. Put the gun down. Delgado turns to face them. In the early morning light, he looks older than his years, worn down by decades of violence and secrets. I'm not going to prison, detective. I told you that in my note. You don't have to do this. Put the gun down and we can talk. Talk about what? About how I executed 2 kids on their wedding night for money. About how I buried them like trash and went home and slept like a baby. Delgado laughs, a hollow sound. I'm not interested in redemption, detective. I made my choices. I lived well because of those choices. And now I'm going to die because of them. The families deserve justice. They deserve to see you answer for what you did. The families. Delgado's expression hardens. Michael Bennett was weak. Nathan came to me because Michael couldn't handle a simple business problem. In my world, weak men don't survive. I did him a favor, really. He went out quick. Cleaner than he deserved. And Sarah? What did she do to deserve being executed? For the first time, something flickers across Delgado's face. Not quite guilt, but perhaps a shadow of it. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Wrong choice in husbands. Put the gun down, Victor. I don't think so. Delgado raises the weapon, but instead of pointing it at the officers, he presses it against his own temple. Tell Emma Whitmore I'm sorry her sister died. Tell her it wasn't personal. It was just business. Victor, don't. The gunshot echoes across the desert. Birds scatter from nearby brush. Victor Delgado crumples to the ground, the weapon falling from his hand. His blood seeps into the same earth that hid his crimes for a quarter century. Cordero stands frozen for a moment, then moves forward with Park and the other officers. The desert wind picks up, carrying dust across the scene, as if the land itself is trying to erase this final act of violence. It's over. But as Cordero looks down at Delgado's body, then up at the vast Arizona sky, he feels no sense of victory. Only the hollow ache that comes from knowing that justice, when it finally arrives, can't undo the damage that was done. Can't bring back the young couple whose only crime was trusting the wrong people. The sun continues to rise, indifferent to the tragedy playing out below. The desert kept its secrets for 27 years. But the price of truth, as always, has been paid in blood. 3 weeks after Victor Delgado's death, Detective Cordero sits across from Emma Whitmore in her living room. Afternoon sun streams through the windows. Jennifer has made coffee and retreated to her room to give them privacy. Nathan Morrison was arrested in Costa Rica this morning, Cordero says. He's being extradited back to the United States. He'll face charges for conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, and obstruction of justice. With Tommy's testimony and the evidence from Victor's storage unit, it's almost certain he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Emma's hands wrap around her coffee mug. Good. He took everything for my sister, her future, the children she would have had, all the years she should have lived. He should lose everything too. There's something else. The medical examiner has released your sister and Michael's remains. You can make funeral arrangements now. Emma closes her eyes. Tears slip down her cheeks. After 27 years, I can finally bury her. I can finally say goodbye. I know this doesn't undo what was done. I know it doesn't bring her back. But at least now you have answers. You know what happened. You know who was responsible. Emma nods slowly. My mother died not knowing. That's the part that breaks my heart. She spent her last years hoping against hope that Sarah was alive somewhere. Maybe with amnesia, maybe trapped, but alive. She died with that hope. And now I know the truth, and I can't tell her. They sit in silence for a moment, the weight of those lost years hanging between them. There's something I need to ask you, Emma says finally. When you found them in the trunk of that car, were they together? Were they holding each other? Cordero remembers the crime scene photos, the careful positioning of the remains. Yes, Michael's arms were around Sarah. Even in death, he was trying to protect her. Emma sobs once, a sound of pure grief, then composes herself. That's exactly what he would have done. He loved her so much. They both deserved so much better than what they got. I know. And I'm sorry it took 27 years to find the truth. But you found it, Emma says. That matters. My sister's not just a missing person anymore. She's not an unsolved mystery. She has her story now, horrible as it is. And the men who killed her have faced justice. The funeral is held on a Saturday morning at a small church in Phoenix. The same church where Sarah and Michael were married 27 years earlier. Emma chose this deliberately, a way of honoring the joy they felt that day before tragedy struck. The church is full. Family members, old friends, people who never stopped wondering what happened to the bright young couple who simply disappeared. Detective Cordero sits in the back, watching as Emma gives the eulogy. My sister Sarah was the kindest person I've ever known, Emma says, standing at the pulpit with Jennifer beside her. She had this way of making everyone feel special, feel seen. She was going to be an amazing teacher, an amazing mother someday, an amazing wife. Michael was her perfect match. They were so happy together, so full of plans and dreams. Emma pauses, gripping the sides of the pulpit. For 27 years, we didn't know what happened to them. We imagined every scenario, held on to every shred of hope. And when we finally learned the truth, it was worse than we'd feared. They were murdered by greedy, evil men who saw their lives as obstacles to be removed. She looks out at the gathered crowd. But I don't want Sarah and Michael to be remembered for how they died. I want them remembered for how they lived. With kindness, with love, with hope for the future. They deserved so much more time than they got. We all deserved more time with them. After the service, people file out into the sunshine. 2 coffins sit side by side at the graveside, ready to be lowered into the earth. Together in death as they were in life. Thank you, Detective, Emma says quietly, for not giving up, for finding them, for making sure the people responsible face justice. I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have found them sooner. You found them when the desert was ready to give them up. Maybe this was always meant to happen now, when I was strong enough to handle it. As the coffins are lowered into the ground, Emma throws a white rose onto each one. I love you, Sarah, she whispers. I never stopped loving you. Rest now. You're finally safe. Cordero watches as the small crowd disperses. People returning to their cars, their lives, carrying the weight of this tragedy with them. But Emma remains, standing at the graveside long after everyone else is gone, saying a final goodbye to the sister she lost so long ago. The investigation is officially closed the following week. Nathan Morrison is arraigned on multiple charges and held without bail. Tommy Delgado receives immunity in exchange for his testimony, though he's lost everything else. His job, his reputation, his relationship with his family. DataSync Solutions is dissolved, its assets frozen pending civil suits. Detective Cordero files his final report and moves on to the next case, as he always does. But he keeps a photo on his desk. One that Emma gave him. Sarah and Michael on their wedding day, radiant with joy, with no idea they had only hours left to live. It reminds him why he does this work. Why he spends his days wading through the worst of human nature. Because people like Sarah and Michael deserve someone to fight for them. To make sure their deaths aren't just forgotten tragedies, but solved cases. Closed files. Justice served, however imperfectly, however late. The desert gave up its secrets at last. The vanished newlyweds were found. The murderers brought to account. But for Emma Whitmore, the real work is just beginning. The work of healing, of moving forward, of carrying her sister's memory into a future Sarah will never see. Some cases close with neat endings. Others leave scars that never fully heal. The Bennett case is both. Justice was served, but it came too late to undo the damage. It always does. 5 years later, Emma Whitmore stands in a bright classroom at Desert Willow Elementary School, watching her daughter Jennifer lead a group of second graders through a reading lesson. Jennifer became a teacher, just like her Aunt Sarah had been, just like Sarah would have wanted. You're a natural, Emma tells her daughter when the children are dismissed for recess. Jennifer smiles, organizing papers on her desk. I feel like Aunt Sarah is with me when I'm teaching. Like she's guiding my hands, whispering the right words to say to each kid. Emma's eyes fill with tears, but they're good tears. Healing tears. The raw grief that consumed her for so long has softened into something gentler. A sweet sadness tinged with love and memory. She visits Sarah's grave every month, bringing fresh flowers and sitting in the shade of the oak tree that's grown beside the headstone. She tells her sister about Jennifer's teaching career, about the scholarship fund Emma established in Sarah and Michael's names, about the small ways their memory continues to touch the world. Detective Cordero retired 2 years earlier, but he still sends Emma a card every September 19th. Just a few words acknowledging the day, remembering Sarah and Michael. It means more to Emma than he probably knows. Nathan Morrison died in prison from a heart attack in his 3rd year of incarceration. Emma felt nothing when she heard the news. Not satisfaction, not anger. Just a hollow emptiness. His death didn't change anything. Didn't bring Sarah back. Tommy Delgado moved away from Arizona, trying to start over somewhere his name isn't associated with murder. Emma doesn't know where he went. Doesn't care. He made his choices. He'll have to live with them. The DataSync warehouse was torn down. The land sold, condominiums built on the site. Emma drives past it sometimes, looking up at the modern buildings and thinking about the blood that soaked into the ground there. The new residents will never know what happened on that spot. Maybe that's better. Maybe some stories don't need to be carried forward. But Sarah's story will be carried forward. In the second grade classroom where her niece teaches. In the scholarship that sends underprivileged kids to college every year. In the way Emma tries to live with kindness and grace, honoring the sister who embodied those qualities. On the evening of what would have been Sarah's 48th birthday, Emma gathers her family together. Jennifer and her new fiancé, a handful of cousins and old friends. They sit in Emma's backyard as the sun sets over the desert, sharing stories about Sarah and Michael. They laugh at memories of Sarah's terrible cooking, how she once set off the fire alarm making spaghetti. They cry remembering Michael's bad jokes and his infectious laugh. They toast to the life Sarah and Michael should have had, and to the legacy they left behind despite their short time on Earth. To Sarah, Emma says, raising her glass to the desert sky where stars are beginning to appear. You were taken from us too soon, but you're never forgotten. You live on in every student Jennifer teaches. In every kid who goes to college on your scholarship. In every act of kindness we perform in your memory. You're still here, sis. You'll always be here. As the night deepens and the gathering slowly disperses, Emma remains outside, looking up at the stars. She thinks about fate and choice. About the random cruelty of the universe and the persistence of love in the face of tragedy. She thinks about the young woman she'd been. 19 years old, watching her sister drive away on her wedding night and never seeing her again. About the years of searching and hoping and grieving. About the moment Detective Cordero called to say they'd found the car. About learning the truth, horrible as it was. And she thinks about this moment right now. 5 years after Sarah was laid to rest. How the sharp edges of grief have worn smooth with time. How she can remember her sister without breaking apart. How love persists even when everything else is lost. The desert wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it the faint smell of creosote and sage. Emma closes her eyes and listens. And in the sound of the wind, she can almost hear her sister's voice. Almost hear her laughter. Almost feel her presence, warm and loving and eternal. Some stories end in tragedy. Some questions are answered too late to do any good. But love, Emma has learned, outlasts everything. Outlasts death and grief and the cruelty of evil men. Outlasts time itself. Sarah is gone, but she's also still here. In memories and legacy. In the lives she touched and the love she gave. The desert kept her secret for 27 years, but it couldn't keep her love hidden. That burns eternal, bright as the desert sun, warm as the Arizona night. Emma opens her eyes and smiles through her tears, looking up at the infinite stars. Good night, Sarah, she whispers. I'll see you again someday. Until then, I'll keep living for both of us. I'll keep remembering. I'll keep loving. That's my promise to you. The stars shine down, brilliant and constant, bearing witness to one woman's grief and one woman's healing. The vanished newlyweds' honeymoon ended in tragedy. But the story doesn't end there. It continues in the people who remembered, who honored, who loved despite the pain. And in that continuation, there is something like redemption, something like hope, something like peace. The desert wind sighs one last time, then falls still. The night is quiet, and Emma Whitmore, sister of the vanished bride, guardian of her memory, stands beneath the stars and feels, for the first time in 27 years, something very close to whole. If this case moved you, if you found yourself unable to stop listening, then you need to subscribe to Ultimate Crime Stories right now. Because we dive deep into the most compelling mysteries, the most shocking crimes, and the most incredible stories of justice delayed but not denied. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we have more incredible true crime stories coming your way. Stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stories that remind us that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to surface. This has been Ultimate Crime Stories. Until next time, remember that justice may be slow, but it never forgets.